So I'm Mark Rank. I'm a professor here at Washington University in St. Louis. I am affiliated with both the School of Social Work and the Department of Sociology here. I've spent most of my career focusing on the issues of poverty and inequality. And I have written a few books on those subjects. One of the things that I'm somewhat known for is the life course work that I've done, which has shown that over the course of somebody's lifetime, the risk of poverty is actually really substantial. So a vast majority of Americans at some point during their lives will experience a year below the official poverty line. And that's really begun, I think, to change people's understanding of the issue of poverty, really to kind of reframe the issue as one of something that happens to somebody else to one that affects us all. So one of the things that I've been interested in and I've worked on is trying to really understand why poverty exists. And the common kind of idea out there in American society is that folks are poor because of some kind of individual failing. They're not working hard enough, they've made bad decisions, they haven't gotten enough education, and so on and so forth. And the framework that I've developed, which is known as structural vulnerability, says really what individual characteristics such as education and skills do is they help us to predict who loses out at the game, but they don't explain why the game produces losers in the first place. And this gets at the idea that poverty really is a structural failing rather than an individual failing. So the argument that I make is that if we look at the United States over the last 50 years, we see that we've been producing more low-wage jobs without benefits. We see that we've cut our safety net programs. And these are kind of the structural failings that result in people experiencing poverty. And the analogy that I like to use to illustrate this is the analogy of musical chairs. So we could say, let's imagine a game of musical chairs here where we have 10 players but 8 chairs available. They circle around, the music stops, 2 people lose out. Now, who loses out? Well, they might have been in a bad position when the music stopped. They might not have been as quick or agile. And those are the specific reasons why those 2 individuals lost out. But given that there's only 8 chairs for 10 players, then those individual characteristics only explain who loses out at the game. What we need to focus on is bringing more chairs into this game analogy. And so I think that that's a very helpful way of thinking about this issue. And the musical chairs analogy, I think, really kind of brings this home in terms of who loses out at the game versus why the game produces losers in the first place. You know, one of the things that I've been interested in is how do we take our research and make it much more accessible to the wider population, to the general public? And so one of the things that I've done recently is to create a website that's called Confronting Poverty that allows individuals to come and learn about many aspects of poverty and inequality. And one of the kind of unique areas in that website is that I, along with my colleague at Cornell, Tom Herschel, developed what's known as a poverty risk calculator. And so individuals can go to that calculator and actually estimate what their particular risk of poverty will be in the next 5, 10, or 15 years. And that's really unique. It's based upon hundreds of thousands of cases of longitudinal data, but it's taking it and distilling it into a tool that individuals can use. And it's, the website is being used in a variety of settings, from colleges to high schools to organizations. and it's been accessed by over folks from over 200 countries. So I'm really excited and proud that we've been able to take our research and really make it accessible to the wider general public. Well, a really good place to learn more about this issue would be to go to the confrontingpoverty.org website. And that's accessible. All the material is free for anybody who wants to go there. And that will provide a lot of context and a lot of, there are lectures and there's multimedia kinds of things that people can look at that will give you a sense that poverty is really a structural failing rather than an individual failing. Another place to go is the newly published book with Lawrence Eppard and Heather Bullock called Poorly Understood: What America Gets Wrong About Poverty. And in that book, we really take on all of the different myths and stereotypes. And many of those myths and stereotypes focus around this idea of an individual failing as the reason for poverty. And what we show is that, again, poverty is very much of a structural rather than an individual failing. And then the last thing that in a few months that people will be able to use is I have a new book that's really focusing on the idea of structural vulnerability. And that book is coming out next fall, and it's titled Rethinking American Poverty, a Structural Vulnerability Approach. And there I really kind of go into some detail in describing this particular approach for understanding poverty. So I would say to keep tuned to your local bookstore, and that should be appearing in the next 9 or 10 months.